Okay, hi.
Hi.
Starting the Egyptian Path of Venus. No, this one's Path of Isis retreat um slideshow.
Nice.
So Tina, since you're here, I sent out an email this morning. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, of I'm curious as to how your Isis Madonna statue and your rose quartz heart, if it's been dreaming with you. Everybody has different ones.
There
That's
she is.
beautiful.
Yes, she
And they're
is.
different sizes too. I was really surprised when Hakeem showed me what he had, and I'm like, this is not what I had in mind. And he said, well,
Hmm.
you're welcome to look. You're welcome to look as we travel. And I did not see one single one for sale.
Wow.
Well, one shop that was next to his grandfather's apothecary shop, he sent me to them. He said they're reliable, but they didn't have any. They went out and searched the town basically, and they brought back two big statues that were much larger than what I had luggage space for. And I didn't even ask the prices on them. I'm sure they were a lot.
Hmm.
And the only other place I saw them were in museums. So they're very, very rare and a very treasured gift. So, because they're powerful. That is the Madonna figure of Egypt. And Egypt is all about, there's so much Darsham. I'm sure that Darsham is anchored in Egypt because of the as above, so below, as within, so without is the female aspect of that. And the mirrors of self-reflection and doing the shadow work is a lot of what we learned and talked about. So I did turn the recording on. What do you, first of all, have you been dreaming? Has it been talking to you?
Um, well, I would say this. When I read that, I thought about it, and I'm a vivid dreamer anyway, so and my dreams have been very intense anyways. However, what did come to mind is kind of what we were just talking about just moments ago, is I was thinking about when that arrived. And I feel like you sent those out like the end of November, first part of December.
Was
Do you
the first, like the first beginning of the second week in December, I think.
okay, so my first the what I was just talking to you about, like my first big energetic episode that occurred was the first Sunday of December. So I would say that was on the precipice of her arrival. It was either right after she arrived or right before or right after. So that was kind of what I thought was, I'm like, okay, well, I'm being assisted with this awakening because I have other things that are occurring with it. But that was that's what came to my mind when I
Awesome.
when I considered that.
And Carenza just texted, she's working on a couple of really tight timelines, and she said, I'll be watching on the recording. So hi, Carenza. We got your message. What Tina, what would you like to know about Egypt? Because I have thousands of slides and I've got them in a slideshow. Um, but it takes 2 to 3 hours to do it. So I really want to encapsulate what it is, because you were the person that said, I really hope I get to see your slide someday.
Oh,
What is it that
well,
you would like to see?
I loved seeing all of the images that you had sent, and it really has created an interest and intrigue that I didn't realize. And I guess the one thing I want to speak to too is the incense. When I opened up that box and the incense washed over me, it was so familiar, and my whole body just, I mean, it was just like my whole body lit up. Like I had a physical reaction to the incense, the smelling
Hmm.
of them.
Nice.
Um, recently, I guess I feel like you spoke quite a bit about the pyramids. I am interested about the pyramids. However, I'm interested about the Sphinx. Is there anything that you learned or came about? I mean, in knowledge of the Sphinx, and I'm just like I'm like what is that and what does it mean? I'm just curious about it. Is it connected with Darshem, or what do you know about that?
Okay, very good. What I am going to do is share my screen. So this is on the patio of the great house, which is the Awian family house. I went with Hakim Awian and Karina Chrysler Awian. Hakim is an indigenous wisdom keeper. His grandfather was an archaeologist who grew up in this house on the Giza Plateau. They call it the Giza Plateau. The GI makes a J sound in Egyptian. Um, and they don't really call it Arabic, they call it Egyptian. It is on a ley line this is the middle pyramid. The ley line goes from the middle pyramid through the Sphinx, which is really called Tefnut. She's female, and it comes right onto the terrace of the family home. Hakim's grandfather was born in 1926, and as a kid, the Tefnut was still buried up to her neck, and that was their playground. They played all around the pyramids and in the tunnels underneath the pyramids. And it was only later on that, when the archaeologists came in, much of what the archaeologists have told us, uh, they have a different story. The Awyans have a different story. They are a tribe that has lived. It's a large, large tribe, and they've lived in this area for centuries, I think. Um, and grandfather Alian was an Aquarian, so he also was able to download a lot, along with his archaeological knowledge and studying the engravings and on the temple walls, and uh, looking at the constructions. The pyramids themselves are not tombs. First of all, a friend gave me a book for my birthday, and right there it says the Great Pyramid was a tomb, and I'm like, oh, that's not true. They've never found any bodies in the pyramids. It would appear that they're energy generators of some sort, that water ran underneath. It is thought that the frequencies that it created could energize the water, and we know from Emoto's work with water that has importance. There were the tunnels underneath, water ran through them. At the time, long ago, thousands of years ago, the Nile ran much closer to the pyramids and the temples, and now it's moved about 8 miles to the east. So this was me, like the first time. I'd been there a week, but when we got to our class, I took a class in biotouch healing technique with his aunt, and it was like that was the first time we were actually on the Giza Plateau, close to where the pyramids. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually here. I'm actually here. I'm actually here. I did it. I made it. So I stuck that in there. I'm gonna pass by a lot of them. This was fun. This is looking at the street from the terrace down below. And you'll see there's horses, there's a camel, there's horse-drawn carts. We watched thousands and thousands and thousands of people go on to the Giza Plateau every day, like an anthill. I mean, that's really what it was like, swarming all over. School groups, they have their days off are Friday and Saturday. And because Friday is the holy day. And so there'd be school groups from Egyptian school groups coming to go on tour of the pyramids. Street scene. It was loud, horns honking. This is our group. This is Sherazad, Hakim's aunt. She's a daughter of grandfather Hakim. Myself, this is Elaine. She's from New Mexico. Carla's from Canada. Christine and Kenzie are both from Canada too. Oh, well, that was an ATV ride at sunset. Oh, and this is Hakim, Karina's husband and the grandson of grandfather. This is Saqqara, where the first step pyramid is. This is the oldest pyramid, where it's also where the Egyptian Book of the Dead was found. This, not in this pyramid. We went into the tomb where the Egyptian Book of the Dead is, which you'll see in a minute. This is Saqqara. This is the healing hospital, and they used frequency and sound, the sound frequency, to determine illness, which I thought was fabulous. This is inside the tomb of the Book of the Dead. It's alabaster. And so, and you can see there's engravings, but also there's an indent of a great big warrior, and there was on both walls. And he was showing us that when you shine a light in it, it lights up from behind.
You're a star.
What is that?
So this was the first initiation in the healing hospital. These are jed pillars, which is the symbol of the divine masculine. And this particular area where Hakim is explaining to us that this was constructed so that when you sit in it, that you balance the masculine and feminine within yourself, balances and is in harmony. So he explained that, and then he had us sit there. Now you can see the thing. We just sat in the sand underneath this for about 15 minutes and meditated. It was very peaceful. Got to that. One of the fun things about Egypt, let me just say, this was called, I always forget what this is called. It's a great big underground, long hallways and cuts in that are cut into the bedrock, and then these huge granite, which looks like a sarcophagus is what they've called it, but the way they're inserted and drop down, they weigh thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. And they're long enough that there's not enough turning room for them to be brought down the hall and turned to go into their section. And so they really don't have any idea how they were constructed, what they were used for. They're staggered. And so what Hakim and his grandfather and his uncles all feel like it had to do, again, with power generation in some way. I have a hunch, and this is me, that they knew more about quantum that we're just discovering. There was no soot anywhere. This was underground. While we were down there, the electricity went out. The generator went out and it was pitch black. I mean, like, I put my hand right in front of my face and could not see it. Of course, we had our cell phones and we had flashlights, so it was no big deal, but it was like, oh yeah, this would be a good place for a ceremony. If you're really doing shadow work and needed to be alone by yourself, and it was quite fascinating. One of the awesome things about Egypt is that there are a lot you get a lot of mirrors, which was fun and not fun depending if it was a light mirror or a shadow mirror. Um, but also like wishes, like silent wishes that I'd had. One was to ride a camel, and I kind of said, well, I chose to ride ATVs in the desert and went, okay, if I don't ride a camel, it's not the end of the world. And then while we were here at Saqqara, there were 3 Bedouin men with their camels, and Hakim paid them for each of us to have, we got to ride in pairs to ride to the different places there because there was a bit of a walking distance. It was pretty cool. This is what it looks like from on top. And then here's the step pyramid in the background. Here's one of the other 2 people, one up here and one here. And they let us. This guy had, what do you say, 17 kids, I think it was. They were all his. All right. The very first night, this was before our tour started. The very first night, we stayed in a hotel and we had private time in the Great Pyramid. We were supposed to go at sunset and our time got bumped. Just some things are the same country to country. Somebody came in that had more money or prestige and they bought our time out and bumped us to 1 to 3 in the morning, which seemed a little outrageous at first, but it turned out to be this huge, huge blessing because we had spent 3 days on that terrace in our BioTouch class watching the thousands of people and all the noise, the horns honking and the tour buses and the camels and the horses and the people, and it just constant noise, loud noise. And when we got out of our bus, it was absolutely quiet. The only people there were the guards at the gate, and the guards at the temple doors, and the dogs. And it was a starlit night, and we got to go in where normally if you go in the Great Pyramid without special permission, you are one of several hundred people that are going up these great big steep ramps up to the king's chamber and then coming back down, and all people from all over the world having their own experiences, talking about what they're experiencing with their people. You're in this mixed group, and our group was 7 people plus Corina, Hakim, and the tour agency that they use had a representative that was always with us, making sure that our entrances were, the bus was there and the entrances were there and there was water on the bus and all the pieces. And there was when we were in Cairo and Alexandria, there was always an armed guard with us, which was required when there were US citizens. There was no danger, but it was some sort of agreement that that Egypt has with the US government. And the guy was in a suit and a tie, dress shirt, didn't even realize he had a gun until one time when he got out of our bus, we had a small van kind of bus, and his suit jacket flipped back and he had a sidearm, and it's like, oh, that's why he's here. Didn't talk to anybody but the bus driver. So we went into the Great Pyramid at 1 o'clock in the morning, had it all to ourselves, hiked up to the king's chamber, did a sounding ceremony, and the sarcophagus, which we would know as a sarcophagus, is made out of rose granite. And it is a sarcophagus in a sense, but it's a sounding chamber. And each one of us had the opportunity to lay flat in the bottom of the chamber and in the box. And then Hakim toned over us. And not chanting, it was toning. And it wasn't the same for every person. I think he reads energy, and he would tone over our chakras depending on what a person needed. And then he had us also toning, and we toned in, if it was beautiful. The sound and the energy kept building and building and building and building. It sounded, after an hour, like there were choirs of angels singing, and the energy just kept 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 building. It was phenomenal. And when I came back, I checked, and the initiation was for the throat chakra. He didn't tell us until the very end when we're asking him, like, okay, what were all these different initiations for? And the Great Pyramid is the throat chakra of the planet. So that's pretty cool. And then when we came out, we got time to explore. Um, and we got to go in just after the King's Chamber in our ceremony. We had another hour that we could explore. So we got to go into the Queen's Chamber, which was just a much smaller room, and it reminded me of the junk closet in the hospital room where I gave birth to Brad, because it was like a kind of like a closet space, and they'd put uh scaffolding and ladders and whatever that was in there, and there was no door on it. It was kind of disappointing. Some of our group went underneath into the tunnels underneath. You had to crawl, and that I didn't have knee pads, and I can't crawl on my artificial knee. So that was enough of a workout. That the incline up to the King's Chamber is like 45 degrees, and it's a wooden ramp with wooden slats nailed that you're going up. Oh man, we all, like, our butts and our legs and thighs ached for a couple days after that. When we came out and looked up, Orion was right over, the constellation of Orion was right over the pyramids with the belt. We couldn't get a picture of it. I don't think anybody was able to get a picture of it, but it was there. And so at 3 o'clock, we went back to our hotel room and slept. Didn't have anything until 1 o'clock the next day. Um, Here's a picture of Kenzie had a room that overlooked the pyramids at night. And then this is the Great Egyptian Museum. They call it the Gem. It's the new museum that they built, an architectural wonder. And I did go. It wasn't part of our tour, but it was one of the reasons I went early, was to see this, and it was amazingly beautiful. The next day we went. This is the pyramids. Another view from the back side of the pyramids. And there's actually 9 pyramids. There's the 3 little ones here. There's a few over here. This was from a restaurant where we had lunch that day. A lot of Arabian style seating where there's cushions on the ground. One of the fascinating things about this picture, it really shows well how there's desert, and then this is Cairo. And all of the smog. It's a very, very smoggy city. And then where there's green growing is when it gets closer to the Nile. This was our lunch that day. This is pretty typical. There was grilled meat, vegetables, and rice, often with vermicelli. What I loved about this is that at this particular restaurant, because it was called the 7 Pyramids, they made their rice like pyramids, and they put a little golden cap on the top. Unfortunately, there was also quite a bit of fresh cut stuff sprinkled on our things, and 5 of us got food poisoning. Not because there was anything wrong with the food, but because our guts aren't accustomed to the bacteria that just grows on the fresh stuff. Everything had to be cooked. All right, so then we went to Tefnut. And we got private time at sunset between her paws. This is the stela between her paws. And there's a little nick right here where we were encouraged to meditate. I asked about what we hear about there being a library under the right paw, and Hakeem didn't say much about it. I forget truthfully what he said about the stelae. what Karina shared is that grandfather Hakim often communicates with her. He passed about 2012. She never met him in the flesh, but he comes to her often, and especially between the paws of Tefnut. Tefnut. Nut is the sky goddess. She is the night sky. She is the hmm, she is the stars, and Tef means spit. So it's the moisture that comes from the night sky or from the air. And if you think about womb, our womb, and the moisture, the climate within our womb space, you're getting close to what Tefnut is. What Corina shared here was that one of grandfather's favorite sayings was yakini, yakini, yapini, yapini, yakini, yakini, but for short, yakini, yakini. The way to remember that is ya, like ya, a key, and your knee. Yakini, yakini. It means my positivity is my protection. And with that, you can say, the light surrounds me, the light flows through me. I am the light. Yakini, yakini. So every morning and every night now, when I wake up and before I go to sleep, I see myself surrounded in light. I can use the Nube Shalema, the center of the Nube Shalema, and put myself in a great big blue lotus, or in the Picator, which is also Isis's headdress and Hathor's headdress. And say, Yakini, Yakini, the light surrounds me, the light flows through me, I am the light. And your positivity is your protection. He recently told her in the Great Pyramid, she just shared when we were in the king's chamber, he came to her and shared that when you if when you if something is present and you don't pay attention to it, it doesn't exist. If you don't pay attention to it, it doesn't exist, were his words. Interesting thought. So she's big and she has a tail. Mohammed was our tour guide here, and he asked us, does the Sphinx have a tail? Does Tefnut have a tail? Which side is it on? And so we had to walk around and check it out. She does. This gives you an idea of perspective. And here's Karina. She's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lady. Originally from Canada. She's an incredible evolutionary astrologer. She went to Egypt on tour, actually the tour that I was first going to go on. She met Hakim. Well, actually, they recognized each other from another lifetime, and she never really went home. They got married quite quickly after, and now they have a little girl, Ruby Rose. This is looking from the parking lot in front of Tefnut towards Giza. And right here is the family terrace where I was standing to take the picture of. And if you look very close, there's a lady in turquoise right here in that Sharazen. So you get an idea of like looking both ways. Notice there's a Pizza Hut, Starbucks. Interestingly enough, the coffee sucked. They use Nescafe most of the time, and even their espressos that weren't good. If you want to get a good cup of coffee, Starbucks was the closest to good coffee you could get, except the Turkish coffee. But those were the little cups that were sweet and very thick. Here's Karina and Hakeem, and what I love about this picture is how they adore each other. They are an excellent example of really working at masculine and feminine balance within themselves and within relationship. This is in Alexandria. We went to the, no, hold on. Oh crap, I forget the name of it. It's an underground burial where the Greeks and Romans mostly were buried. But there's a lot, you can see the shell of the the Sophia shell. Uh-oh, here we go. That represents Sophia, the divine feminine, snakes, the winged scarab. Are you ready for this, Tina?
Yeah.
Not only the snake, but check this out. Dressed like a Roman.
Reptile.
Yep. So I thought that was, that nothing was said about it, but I'm like, whoa, look at that. I wonder what that means.
Very
I wonder who
interesting.
was there that nobody recorded in history in the books that we got to read.
All right.
I did not like the feel of this place. There were a lot of, well, I didn't pick it up. Actually, my roommate, Elaine was my roommate, and she picked up later that there we did some releasing work there because there was a lot of unrest. And we went to the museum in Alexandria, and this is where one of the statues of the Divine Mother was. Notice that she has the picator. This is Isis on her head. Our symbol for picator is the symbol of the divine mother, the divine feminine. Another angle. The reason we went here is because this is a statue of Mary Magdalene with her baby. It's known that she was pregnant at the time of the crucifixion. Martha, Lazarus, Mary, Mother Mary, Joseph of Arimathea helped them escape with Mary Salome and Mary Jacobe. They came to Alexandria and spent some time there. She had the baby there. She had Jesus's baby there, Yeshua's baby. It depending on the source, it was the second child or the third child. I read two different sources now that said that she had her first child with John the Baptist. Both of them were historical novels, so I don't know for sure. But what we do know is that they left from the port in Alexandria. This was found underground. You see this picture here, it's huge. But it's a picture of where they found her in the port under the water. And this is where they left from. So we went down to the port, and there was a little boat there, like, well, they left in a small boat. So let's just take a picture in front of the boat. And knowing that this is where they left from. And then in April, the first part of April, I'm going on the second part of this tour to France, and we're starting out at the beach where she landed, where Mary Magdalene landed, and Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. This is the citadel, which is the fort where they protected the harbor, where the harbor was protected, looking through the gun, or, where, I don't know if there was guns, probably weapons, arrows. Some pretty sights. This is the Mediterranean. Those some different shots. These are not all my pictures. Colin, who is the other male in our group, his Christine's partner, discovered that he was a really good photographer. And so he shared a lot of, this was one of his, he shared a lot of pictures with us. He had an eye. This is where we stayed. This is in the palace grounds of a prince, and the hotel. our room was somewhere around up in here, I think on about the 5th floor. This was the palace, the grounds, like when you look down from our balcony and then the palace, the front of it, the view at night over the Mediterranean. There's a bridge, a little bit of the city here to the right. The view in the daytime, because we got in after dark. So it's like, well, we don't know what we're looking at. We'll take pictures of the lights. They were setting up overnight. They had set up for the wedding. We looked down and it's like, oh my gosh, there are these beautiful trees and these archways. And then I watched as I was having my morning tea, they brought in a sound system and lights. Another angle. And then on the other side of the hotel, we had our swimming beach and a swimming pool and a place to sun. So we got to swim in the Mediterranean. Well, I went up to a little over my knees. I was not that brave. It was pretty cold. Here's our group. Christine, Kenzie, Colin, Daisy joined us. Daisy's from South Africa. And then Carla. Then we went back to Cairo. We flew to Luxor and we stayed on an island in the middle of the Nile. And these are pictures of where we stayed. These were all one story, more like we would think of as a motel or units like this. Ours was behind this tree. We had chairs outside and you could do hand laundry and put them out to dry, walk all around. This beautiful little bird. Oh, there's a close-up of it. Look at how unusual that is. I'm a bird fan, in case you didn't know. This was this is the Nile. Some of the walkways, the flowers, and the dock. We did a lot of our traveling there by these little boats that they had a top on them. There'll be a picture later where you can see it. This was where we ate every morning. The free breakfast was in here, huge. And then people from all over the world, so they had breakfast kinds of food. If you're a pastry person, there was like a whole wall practically of layers of pastry. It was like, oh my God, if Bill was here, he would have been in seventh heaven. He didn't want to go. We originally had talked about it and he's like, I don't need to do that. You go. Like, fine. I prefer traveling by myself. This was the pool. One of the pools. Oh, I didn't put the other one in. We'll see it a little bit later. This was the first big temple that we went to, the temple complex. This is Karnak. And so we're looking at initiation number 4, where we visited Sekhmet. So you get a kind of an idea. As in many, many places, there have been, centuries of people living here. And so depending on their building style, they would take stones from previous buildings and build something new with it. This is our first experience of the great big columns and statues, and look at the engravings. So we visited Sekhmet first. And Sekhmet, here's Hakim explaining a little bit. Sekhmet is in the temple of Ptah. Her consort, so her equal partner, is Ptah. And here's where we walked in. We had a private viewing here also. And you walk back into the back, which is where the Holy of Holies is, it's where ley lines cross. We got private time with Sekhmet. Now she is about 10 feet tall, probably, maybe 12 feet tall. And she really is, I have decided that, we learned that Bast was the mentor of the first level, but it's really Sekhmet. When you look at, she is the one that clears the way. She helps us go after our shadows. That's how she clears the way. When you look at the level 1 symbols, that they're specifically constructed for clearing our own personal storyline in this lifetime. And yeah, pretty much this lifetime. It is this lifetime. But the Seijen, which equalizes and raises the frequency, and the gay mat, because everything is done in love, and it is gay mat. M-A''AT is pronounced mat, not mat. So I taught it to you wrong. It's gay mat is the past, past and future all in the now, and it is the symbol of divine love. And love heals everything. And then you use the Maya, which clears the illusion, so it cuts through the shadows. It shows you the shadows. And Sekhmet communicate with everybody in a different way. The energy was really, really strong for me. As in the King's Chamber, my hands started fluttering. We were standing in this room, and I'm like, my body starts swaying back and forth. We were told later that depending on like how much shadow work you've done, either she's like apparent and you're feeling like all crouched down and in not shame exactly, but like you've been seen, that feeling, or one of great joy. And my experience of it was one of great joy. She is the ferocious, fierce mama. She's that part in ourselves that has so often been shut down because we're called royal bitches if we let that part out. But the part that we know, if you've had a child of or defending a child, of really being ferocious and protecting and having that superpower of, nobody's gonna mess with this. And that's Sekhmet. And we call her Mama Sekhmet. And this was the second picture that was taken of her. No camera was moved, but there was a lot of energy moving in there, and the camera caught it. She also tends to pulse. This is Karina's. The camera's not moving, but if you'll notice that there's a pulse there. This was taken at another time when Karina was there, but I put it in because you really get a sense of the energy. She is Sekhmet, Isis, all of the goddesses and gods, as we've been told, were never embodied. Isis was never embodied. She is an aspect of nature that is in with each one of the netters, or an aspect of nature that's within us. So we would know it most as an archetype, is how we can understand it. Or if you've studied on a shamanic path, how your spirit animals have certain qualities that you can find within yourself. So that's what the netters are. And so what Sekhmet can help us do is clear those parts in ourselves that stop us from being the fierce mama, that's standing in our power, that's speaking truth, when and with passion, not with anger, but with sureness. And that is Sekhmet. This tree was right outside with the long path, the building that we walked into, in the long hall. And it's a special sacred plant. This bulb had a very liquid, a milky substance that was connected with all of the energy of that. We see her many, many, many times. She's on most of the temple walls. The body of a woman with the head of a lioness. These are some of the statues we got. This was the first place we got to walk around. We got some free time to walk around and explore. They don't look so big until you see this lady standing here, a little perspective. And then I took this, we had to hydrate a lot because not only is it a desert climate, but we were moving a lot of energy. And so we had a lot of mango juice, and this was lemon basil. And all our drinks always had these crazy twisty straws that they turned in different shapes. It just tickled me. All right, so we went back that night. This is also at a place on the island, the Jolie V, the V Jolie, I think it was called the Jolie V, the happy place. This is the infinity pool. And so the Nile is right out here. But as you look at it, it looks like it's one straight body of water. And sunset. I love that the sun was coming right to us. Couple artistic shots. Then we went that night by boat into Luxor to have dinner. And this is right across there's a strip of restaurants along the river, and then shops that were open in the evening, and then a street, and right across the street there's the temple ruins. Luxor is kind of in the center of the country, and it has the most temple ruins of anywhere in Egypt. A lot of different sites. It's also where, not far from there, is the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens, where there were burial sites. We did not go there because we were specifically looking for the places where women were empowered. So the next morning we were up at sunrise to go to Hatshepsut's temple. Hatshepsut was a queen that ruled for many, many years. She started out as the wife of the king. He died. And we went there for sunrise. This temple is carved into the mountain, and you can see the sun has not yet come up to hit the rocks. We got private time in the Holy of Holies here to meditate. And then we each got to walk out into the light. And one thing people could do there was take hot air balloon rides, which we did not do, but we were greeted by these hot air balloons as we came out of the temple. The initiation here was the activation of the solar plexus. So as the sun is rising and we're walking out, we're being activated. Probably, I don't remember for sure, but probably we toned that Hakeem guided us in toning. I don't really remember. And now this is as the sun starts to shine and the colors. This was one of Colin's pictures. And he learned how to take these panoramic ones that arced. All right, I put this one in because of the cow. The cow plays a really big part in India, or I'm sorry, in India, yes, but in Egypt also. And if you remember in the Norse story, Adumla was the cow that licked the ice and fed the ice giant Ymir so that the ice people were born. The cow represents the great cosmic womb. So the universe, the galaxies, the space in which all of that exists. Tefnut, the sky goddess, is considered the skin of the belly of the cow. And here again, we have our picator. This was the next temple we went to. We did not have an activation here, but you can see the details. And always the underside, where that was less subjected to weather, But how deeply these are engraved. And then the size of them. Here's a guy to get some perspective. You could spend years in each temple studying. And Hakeem explained a lot to us. You know, look at the people, look how big these are. That it's just so much to remember. I have some of it recorded. He is a walking, oh my God, he's so wise. He has so much knowledge. He went to school, he trained as a tour guide. It's like a whole curriculum there, and a certification, and then a national certification. Um, and he also has all of the wisdom that his aunt and his grandfather, and then his aunt and his uncles are all tour guides also, that they've studied, you know, the temples their whole lives. And he's goofy. He's goofy. He's 30, like 33, 34 years old. He's goofy. He's a lot of fun. But then he gets into this part where he's telling everything, and he's really good at managing crowds and making sure, reading people and making sure that each individual gets what they need and what they came for, and challenges them to, you know, in a way that I don't think most people realize they were being challenged to do some shadow work. Recognize her. Look at these beauties. And then again, the cow, the horns. And archaeologists will say, you know, one thing about what these are, but Hathor, and just as a reminder that this is the shape of our uterus, the fallopian tubes, and this is the birth canal with the cervix. These are into so that you can see, this was a more sheltered place, some of the art. This was actually like through a screen. We were invited. The guards will say, "Hey, come here. I'll show you something private." And then they want a tip. That's how they make their money. And you give them a buck or, you know, Egyptian pounds, a little bit, little tip. They'll here, look at the style of this. This is much more Greek. But look at this beauty. The snakes and the wings. This was on the boat, so you get an idea more of what our boat, we had a ceiling to it, and we were sitting pretty close to the water. This was a sunset tour on the Nile. Not a tour, we were just going for a little ride. Then the next day we went to Dendera to Hathor's temple, and this is Ruby. This is Ruby Rose with Hakeem and Corina. She was 5 months there. She's oh my gosh. She's 6, 7, 8 months now. But she most of the time she stayed with grandma in the hotel because it was super hot. But Hathor's temple is very special, and it's special to Corina. And so she wanted to make sure to take Ruby. So this is walking up to the Hathor temple. This is the doorway in. Now, I mean, there's a big grate so that you get an idea of perspective. The art, the inside this, the sculptures, it was amazing. This is the scarab, the winged scarab, and what's really unusual about this is that it's the underside of the scarab, and it's the only temple that the underside is vulnerable. The scarab is a hermaphrodite in that it doesn't need another to reproduce. It lays its eggs in a dung ball, rolls it in until it's covered in mud, and then the heat inside that dung ball um, creates itself. So it's the symbol of rebirth. It's also the symbol of balance, masculine, feminine balance. Which the Nile, there's a lot of pictures, and there I might have included one here. I'll hold that for just a second. So to get an idea of what we were looking at, the ceilings in Dendera Temple and in another temple that we went to, Esna was the name of it. Wasn't initiation, but our the cosmology is all in the ceiling. And so actually kind of your stiff neck got stiff. I wanted to lay flat on my back on the floor to stare, but of course we couldn't do that. But look at this. That's all stone.
Corey, may I ask a question?
Certainly.
So, did Hakeem address the repetition of images? I mean, does that mean something, or it just, I mean, some of the images, they're repeating. They repeat where they're at, and then they're repeating in each of the temples. I was just wondering if that had significance or if he spoke to that.
I'm not sure he talked about the repetition. What he did talk about was that the divine feminine was a very big part of ancient Egyptian way of being. And the priests wrote the divine feminine out of the story. They believe Hakim's grandfather, and that as they worked with this, believed that it was because the knowledge that the divine feminine gave was one of sovereignty and of personal power. And I will show you Seshet in a few minutes. And they took like attributes away one at a time and spread them out and gave them to others so that it diffused her teaching or the essence of going within our wombs and intuiting our womb wisdom. And Karina has the belief that our cervix is directly connected, is like a portal to Uranus. We didn't talk about it on this trip. There's layers there. There's layers. So to answer your question, no, he did not. What would you interpret from the images again and again and again being repeated? What does that tell you?
Well, I would interpret that it is of great significance, and somebody wanting to make sure that whoever sees these images has the importance impressed upon them, that there's a significance here. It would be interesting to know further what the images mean, because I even noticed in some of the earlier photos there was a bird that looks like maybe it's a sun or maybe it's a ball, but it's a bird and it's a round image, and that is on a lot of them, like in the ceiling
The
or the
solar
upper.
disk.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I'm just,
Yeah,
it's
here we go.
curious to me. Yes, that, yep.
Yeah, he
Um,
did speak about this. It is, I mean, Ra was the sun god.
mhm,
And so the importance of the sun, and it was desert community, but also, thousands and thousands of years ago, it was very tropical.
mhm,
I think the thing for in the Hathor temple with the image over and over again is how venerated the mother was,
mhm,
that everything is born of the mother. And it's the mother in the womb that's so powerful. This was always goes straight back into the Holy of Holies, which is where the ley lines cross. This is in the ceiling, and this is Newt. This is how Newt is represented as the night sky and the sky goddess, and she is birthing
mm,
rays of light, and here is Hathor, which is the womb. So again and again and again, even though she was written out of the story by the priests, and it's also believed that Hakim's grandfather and that family belief is, well, it's not just a belief, it's like the wisdom that they share with us is that at some point the priests made beauty be the standard by which women were judged. And it would have had to have been over time, but that was what made a successful woman, not that she was wise or that she had knowledge of herbs and stones and frequencies and the ability to birth. What made her a good woman was her beauty, taking her power away of what women's true strengths are. This, what we got to spend time in the Holy of Holies. Again, one individual time, even though there were many, many, many people there. We had private time. We bought those permissions, and what I mean, it's part of what we paid for. Um, and what that looks like is is Hakim takes that money that was in the kind of earmarked for that and tips a guard, and then they make sure nobody else is in the Holy of Holies, which is the, like, we would consider it the altar room. And so we had time to meditate, and the initiation there was the reactivation of our genetic codes. And there was toning, and Hakim guided us through a thing. And then we were told to climb up this ladder, and this is about a yard square entrance that you have to crawl through. And then when you get in, there's this narrow, this is what you crawl into. There's this narrow, this is like the end where the ladder is, and to the other end. And there's all these carvings on the wall, but it's very, very narrow. And on the far end, this is what you walk to. And she is powerful. And I think everybody had different experiences. There's not even something that you can really put into words. One of the carvings on the wall was this. This is a jed pillar, which is the symbol of the divine masculine. So there are many ways to interpret this. Are these sperm? Are these,
that's what I was just gonna ask. And I
are they,
wondered if you were walking into the womb
yeah, could be,
when you walk up to Hathor there.
or is this some sort of symbol of energy, how energy was generated?
Yeah, the tool that you said and at the very beginning was a representation of, I think it was your first activation where it was a balancing of the masculine and feminine, but that has a name and I'm drawing a blank on it, that it's there on the right, that
The jed,
has
it's called a jed pillar.
that's what it's called, the jed pillar. I thought it
Yeah.
was called, I thought it started with an S. Thank you,
Yeah.
because I was thinking of that when you spoke of it the first time. I'm like, well, that that's something else. So
And to me, it looks like a generator.
yes,
You know,
yeah.
it looks like my folks used to collect insulators. And I have one. Can you see this?
Oh yeah.
This is made out of rose quartz, which is the material that the sounding box in the King's Chamber is made out of.
Hmm.
And then I
Beautiful.
have the Isis knot, which is the symbol of the divine feminine. She is she holds the energy of the womb and of birthing and creation. So Hakim considers this the Egyptian symbol of masculine and feminine balance.
Uh-huh.
And they went with me. Well, along with your stones, they went with me, and I have a black granite one, and my angelite stone were present in all of the initiations. And so many interesting carvings. You could just study them and study them. These almost look like goat horns to me. So much symbology that you could go.
It's fascinating the texture and the art and how they've created like an embossment and then they're still carving on top of that. Like
Mhm.
it's just, I mean, the time, let
Yeah.
alone the message that's being shared. It's just it's fascinating to me.
Well, and then you have to think that this happened over thousands of years
Yeah.
in different civilizations. And I'll show you coming up, there are some pillars that had very much different carvings. And when I asked, it was because of the people that lived there. This is Esna Temple. And this one was a much smaller place, kind of, it was one of the places we stopped when we were traveling down the Nile on the boat. But the colors are so bright. Look at those pillars, particularly the backside where they were kind of protected from the weather. But there's also the sun, the solar disk. Yeah, I focused on the feminine part, but there's a lot of masculine too. Oh, I'm sorry, that must have been in Hathor Temple. This is the Mamisi behind Hathor Temple. This was it's called the Isis Mamisi, and it is the birthing temple. All women were invited to birth there. It wasn't just for the elite. This is inside the ceiling of the Mamisi, and again we have Tefnut. She's a little decayed, but here's the birthing. Here's her body and the birthing. Tall, tall walls. It made you wonder why did they need walls quite so tall? Long and narrow room.
Do you think it has something to do with the sound, Corey? Because you've spoke of the frequency, and I mean, I'm very interested in frequency and sound healing. Do you think that those walls were built the sizes and whatnot for the toning and to get that proper sound,
You know, that's a
perhaps?
really, really good thought. You can see Hathor repeated over and over and over again. This was the back wall, and there had been something here behind where Kenzie's standing. I'll show you a picture in a minute that had been removed. I don't know if it ended up in a museum. That's one of the side walls. Here's the back. They even have it lit. So what was there that they took out, and where did it end up? Is it in a museum somewhere? Is it a private collection? This is Esna Temple. And the colors in these people are a restoration team that are using a special process to clean. And these are the colors that are underneath when they're cleaning. Look at the ceiling. And we asked them if they were doing any touch-up painting, and they said absolutely not. This is what's underneath, what we're finding. There were whole cosmologies on the ceiling. This is Bess. Bess is the protector of birth. And he's this little monkey guy. But he's on the walls of all of the mimesis, always protecting birth. This is the cosmology. The deacons, Egypt divides up their cosmology a different way. And Hakeem explained it, and I have it written down. It didn't stick in my mind of how they had a 360-day year and 5 days of celebration that made the 365. These are zodiac signs, and Karina was able to point out every single one of them. I don't know my zodiac signs well enough to understand them, and my neck got sore. She took some really phenomenal pictures. We found Sekhmet everywhere. And there's little Ruby on the boat. Now we're on the boat traveling. And the boat has a cool name. No, what they wear are jalabeas. This is a jalabea. This is the back deck. So these are all crew members. This is the owner. And then some of our grant group. And we got an upgrade on the boat, and it was all teak wood. We stopped to swim in the Nile. This is Oma, grandma, great lady. And because we were going upstream, there was a tugboat pulling us, and the tugboat had a couple kayaks on top. So I asked him if they'd unload the kayaks, and we stopped. I will show you a picture of our boat in a minute. This was one of the other boats that was on the river, where a lot of tour groups, if you go on a big tour, you'd be on something like this. Here I am, kayak in the Nile. This is Mohammed. He's a different tour guide that worked in the center of the country in the Luxor area. His family, both of our guides were named Mohammed. It's a very, very common name. We had like 5 of the guys on the crew. 4 of the guys on the crew were Mohammed, and this was Mohammed. A fascinating thing about him is that, well, one, that Ruby would let him hold her because she wouldn't let anybody hold her except her parents and Oma. But he can trace, his family has always been from Luxor in the center of Egypt. They can trace their family roots back to Abraham, the Abraham of the Bible. And so they are an original tribe of that area. Really, really nice man. Some of Colin's shots. This was our boat at night. One night they pulled over. We always docked at night anyway, and oftentimes in the country because all of us wanted quiet. And so anywhere we were at, even in temples, visiting temples, is that we went at a time where we were away from crowds. The crew unloaded all of our tables and chairs, and these are like the chairs from the dining room that we got to sit in, and brought them all down this plank and set them up in this shelter that was made of grasses and wood for a barbecue. The chef brought all the dishes out. This was our chef and the barbecue. This was also Mohammed. He took care of our beverages for us. And this was our boat. Our rooms were down here, so we were pretty close to the water. Our windows would slide open if we wanted to be close to the water. We kept them closed for humidity and bugs. A lot of flies. There were a lot of flies. And then this was like the open air where we could sit during the day. And there was a hot tub here, a place to sun. This was pretty much where the crew hung out. They would put a big rug out and eat, sit on the ground and eat. Our dining room was in this enclosed area. The front of the boat. And then they hired a band, which hooked up to the electricity from the boat. They had an amplifier and a microphone and cell phones. Did you catch that? Let me back that up. See, he's on a cell phone. So they're jalapenos and they may be in a, a farm, pretty rural area. And so we had entertainment and we had dancing. All the guys dressed in their jalapenos and they would pull us all out, get us dancing, help us learn the steps. Egypt is a Muslim country and it is alcohol free. This was all happy, sober fun. And they knew how to have fun. Really generous people, really get you involved. This is Sobek Temple. Again, you see the sun disk with the snakes. Lots, and Sobek is the crocodile. So this is, the crocodiles are all about facing your deepest and biggest fears. So we were just, Hakeem talked to us a bit about that. And then we got to choose, were we going to go in that way or that way, all the way to the back. We could choose how we wanted to go, walk with intention. This was a root chakra initiation to confront and digest our fears. And there was a Mamisia birthing house here, the remains of a birthing house. And it was a standard feature in Greco-Roman temples also, but it was first Egyptian. And they said of the child of the main deity of the temple, but it really was a birthing center for everyone. These are some pictures from that Mamisi. Oh, this Daisy. This was the place where there were the most vendors and children trying to get us to buy stuff. When we got back that day, another Mohammed, who was the one that was the young man that cleaned our rooms, had made tall sculptures for us. Mine was a big flower, and this was Elaine's water bottle, but he put it in there to water the flower. And then he used one of her scarves to create a, there he is, nice young man. And then out in the hall, he made a Bedouin with a hookah pipe. Funny. And then that day we swam. They treated us like queens. They brought out cushions, laid them in the sand for us. They're doing little water ceremonies. That's Christine. Our guys, these were our male anchors. Mohammed, Hakeem, and Colin. Still trying to figure out this drumming pattern. You gives you an idea of how how slowly the boat was moving. It was so relaxing. We really needed time just to be after the intensity of the initiations in Cairo and Alexandria. And Karnak. Few shots of our peeps. This was like the last night we were on the boat. Our crew giving us a farewell kind of little serenade.
Corey, is there any sound to this?
It goes on and on. What fascinated me about this is that all of their garments didn't have a wrinkle in them, and they were pristine white. And they were in like a bunk room. They had bunk beds in a room. That was then they all shared the same room. I never could figure out how they stayed so pressed. Oh, all right. Where was that picture? This day, the day before this day, we were in a temple, and now I don't remember which one, probably Esna. And Hakim took us and showed us a picture of Thoth, who wrote the Emerald Tablet. Right beside him is his consort, Seshet. Seshet is, she was the most powerful and empowered netter. She had the ability to know where the ley lines crossed. She would find the Holy of Holies and say, this is how the temple must be aligned and laid out. I had some other notes about her. She's known. What really struck was that Hakim believed she had her own emerald tablet, where the emerald tablet of Thoth or Hermes was as above, so below. I'm convinced as I communicate with her that her tablet was as within, so without. And it had the hidden wisdom of how to access our personal sovereignty and how to birth our creations that are not human babies. And it was hidden, destroyed. She was so powerful to give people personal sovereignty that her aspects were taken and divided up among many other of the female netters so that people wouldn't know how to be sovereign and free and how to birth their reality. So the last night that we're on the boat, Elaine and I are sleeping. In the middle of the night, we hear this outside our windows. Now, we are parked, yes, but there's a farm out there, and there's goats, and there's a cow, and there's a donkey, and a horse, and a dogs, and chickens, and geese, etc., roaming around. But there's water between us and them, and there's no plank, there's no plank down, no gangplank. And Elaine's, we both wake up startled. And she said, "Did you hear that?" I'm like, "Yeah, what is that?" She says, "I don't know." And here we go. We hear it again. So we open the window and we see absolutely nothing. We're like, well, what the heck? Because once again, it's like huge noise. And we grab our cameras and take a picture. And this is what's standing on the ledge outside of our windows. It is a heron. A heron came to give us medicine. And, Thoth has he's like an ibis, has this big bill. And Elaine, out of a dead sleep, the first words out of her mouth were, "What did you do with Sachet? And where is her emerald tablet?" Oh my God, I cracked up. I'm like, I don't know what the hell she was dreaming. I was like, okay, we'll take that as a nice medicine sign. So we had a visit from a very powerful medicine animal. And the next morning, this is our boat out here. They put the plank to the farm and we hiked across this gravel path and came up to the road and a bus was waiting for us. And then from there on out, we traveled once the bus took us to where our boat was. This is how we traveled. And this is Isis's temple in the background. We're now, which is on an island all of its own. And we're traveling to oh, well, we are traveling to first a restaurant and then our hotel, which I'll show you pictures in a minute. And then we went to this really cool temple of Kalabasa, which was a very powerful, it's on an island, little tiny island all its own, and it had such strong feminine vibes. This is in the Holy Holy, it's looking back out with, this is Karina. You can see the light, the rays coming in, all centering on her. Very big symbols of birth and masculine feminine balance in that Holy of Holies. And then this was one of the side, like the paths in one of the outside temples. Gorgeous. At some point, maybe it had a roof. I don't know. It was just, and then this is all, well, would be the Nile. It's below the dam in Aswan. Same building. It's fascinating, gorgeous. Oh, my finger. But I love the columns, very Corinthian. This is Isis temple as we're going by. We stopped at a restaurant. I finally broke down. Everybody was wearing Egyptian pants. I bought myself a couple pairs. They're very comfy and they're very cool. The women were all, the Muslim women were all in long dresses, long sleeves, long skirts. Some wore head coverings and face coverings. Some did not. Some wore head coverings. There were women that were dressed in Western attire, some. But it started, I took long shorts like down to my knee and I started feeling kind of naked. And I wore my capris a lot. And then I'm finally kind of graduated to longer pants. And the climate was hot. It was in the 80s, upper 80s during the here because we were much closer to the equator. And then into the 60s at night. In a little farther north, it was into the 50s at night. But it's Egyptian cotton and they're so smooth and they were very cool. This is where we stayed on an island, all Greek style. I'm trying to get oriented here. This is the backside. So the Isis temple is back here. We had a surprise. This is some aerial shots, Colin's pictures again. We all had little entrances into our rooms. We had private patios that had a hot tub that wasn't hot. Our room was that one over there. On this level, I think. This was outside of the restaurant. It was like the lounge area that was open air. It's one of the doors. We were close to the Sudan. So it's a lot of Nubian tribes, really black people, and beautiful, beautiful art. Very different from what we'd seen up to that point. And that's where all of our doors into our rooms looked like this. This was glass. So when the light came through, we had stained glass patterns on our floor. And looking down into this is open air bar area. Another view of it. You could eat breakfast here in the morning. A view from that deck. And at night, it was a gorgeous place. And this really, really steep road to go down to the docks like this. And at night, this was an LED light that went like in the center of the pavement. Everything, all of the surfaces were uneven, like majorly uneven stones. In the temples, the same. The lots of like 12-inch curbs. Talk about a butt and thigh workout. Oh my goodness. Moonlight on the water. We were told to wear swimsuits, but to wear cover up and look like we had street clothes on because we were in for a surprise and we were on our way to that surprise. Kenzie and Mohammed fell in love. And they are definitely a couple now. They're both divorced and have kids. And she's in Canada and well, not right now. She went back to Egypt. But it was lovely, a very deep commitment kind of relationship where they recognized each other from a past life, as Hakeem and Corrine had. Corrina had. It was fabulous to watch the energy as they were as they were recognizing each other and getting reacquainted in this lifetime. So the Isis temple started to flood when they built the Aswan Dam and the water levels rose. They took the temple apart and moved it to the island that where I showed you. The first two gateways they were not able to move. They're still in the original place. And these are the gateways. And was one of Hakim's grandfather's ceremonies to take people through these gateways as the priestesses had been led in their initiations. It was a full moon. We got there and this other group was there and doing their own kind of ceremony, and they didn't hurry when another group came. And so by the time we got our time in the water, it's actually dark. And the picture didn't show up that way. But this is me right here. I was following Hakeem and he said, well, who should go first here? And I'm like, I'm the elder in this group. I should. I think I said, I'm the grandma here. I should. And so there are big steps there that go under the water, and it was cold, very, very cold. But we did and this was, these pictures don't get posted on any internet because you're not supposed to take pictures of doing any ceremony or any meditation, anything like that. If the authorities get view of, they get sight of it, the guides will get fined. Hakeem told their guide, the guy that was like leading the ceremony, because the women were taking all sorts of Instagram posted, posing shots in their goddesses and their, their head things, and they were pretty dolled up, and it was meaningful to them. And Hakeem said, pictures can't be posted. And we found out later that this guy got fined. And the danger in that is that they'll start posting guards there, and it will be like you'll have to pay admission to go. So, but when we got our time in the water of going through the gateways, we are out under the full moon. And I just going through, there are no words. Instead of at sunset, we were able to be out in that water in the stream of the full moon, and it was magical. There are no words. Just I love that shot. Corrina thought the ship had sailed on her ever having kids. And then Ruby Rose, Hakeem, and she found each other. And then Ruby Rose said to her, Mama, can I come now? And She is a precious little girl, very wise old soul. Oh my goodness. It's going to be a powerhouse. Oh, this is Hakeem's dad. We're in his apothecary, which is where your incense came from and your teas. That night, the night after we went to the Isis temple, this is or the archways. I forget what I called them. Then we went to the Isis temple and did the priestess initiation ceremony, which interestingly enough does not start here where I took you, and I'm going to rewrite that because it starts in the back. The gateways, the other gateways are in the back, and we did a ritual washing. And then there is on this side, there is a slab that we each laid on and did a breathing sequence to ground, and then we're taken in through the back to the Holy of Holies. And got to put our hands on the altar and state our intents, and then sit with our backs against as we were all toning together. And this was a rebirth ceremony. And then we were escorted out through from the whole Holy of Holies out this way, which was the rebirth. They left the lights off. This actually, it was dark when I took this picture, and this was like a no flash picture. It was totally dark to the point where I'm using my flashlight on my camera to make sure that I'm not stepping on any holes. And they left the lights off for us. We were there at sunset and we had 2 hours of private time. And or maybe it was an hour. I think it was 2 hours. They left the lights off until we were done. And then we got to take some pictures and explore with the lights on. And then they had, just as we were leaving, they have for the public, they have like a light show with we went to one at Chichen Itza where they do an audio and lights and tell the story, and we didn't stay for that, but that's something that people can come. Everybody has to come there by boat because it's on an island by itself. And Oma stayed with Ruby while we were doing our ceremony, and then they got to walk around with her. Beautiful full moon. Oh, and that was the end of the tour. After that night, we flew back to Cairo, and some people went home or went on to other places. I did the extension where we drove 10 hours out into the desert to Siwa. And this was at sunset after we'd been in the car about 8 hours. It's like, are we there yet? So I'm going to flip through these pretty fast. This is the salt flats. They mine salts here. They use big road equipment and front loaders and scoop it out. They scoop it out and the hole fills with this water that is so salty that you can hardly stand up in it. You just float. So we did that first day. We floated. It was so cold, but I managed to get all of me in, even the back of my neck. These are the salt crystals.
How is the water so blue?
It's just naturally when it fills up, the water's clear, and it's the salt that I suppose it reflects the sky.
Wow.
But the crystals are all square and they cut. And we had our shoes on or our flip-flops until you took them off to sit down on the edge to get in. And then the backs of our legs were cut, the bottoms of our feet were cut. They're like, you look at me, I'm floating and I'm actually all the way in, because I do not like my shoulders, the back of my shoulders do not like to get cold. This is called Siwa, and there are hot springs and cold springs. This is salt. It looks like foam, but it's actually crystallized salt that forms on the edges of the pool. was fascinating. And then when we got out, you know, Carla's a young woman. She's in her early 30s, and so she has all of her body hair still, and every hair started to crystallize with salt. She just sparkled. And there were round balls of it. Then we left there and we went to, there's a hot springs there too that comes out hot like Yosemite or Yellowstone hot. And they actually have a building where they harness that water, and I think they disperse it out into the community. But this particular place was a hot springs, and we went there afterwards to warm up and then to have lunch. This wasn't one of the places. I mean, pretty much we ate the same thing twice a day. It's meat and vegetables and rice in different configurations. But this building was reeds, like what we would know as bamboo, right? Covered in long grasses and then blankets. I mean, they're woven rugs, I would say, more very rustic. Food was good. Then we went to Cleopatra's Pool, which was also in Siwa, but another little place where it was kind of it was said that Cleopatra came here to swim. So you came in, there were steps that came down. In this water, it was like Goldilocks, too cold, too hot. This was just right. Where every day we ended up coming back here every single day because for all of us, the temperature was something that we could tolerate. Carla really loved cold, cold water. And Hakeem and I were both like, no, it's got to be pretty warm. But the hot springs was almost too hot. I mean, I loved it, but it was also, you couldn't stay in it too long. It was really like being in a very hot tub. This was beautiful. And we were there 4 days, I think 4.5 days, and we swam each day. Beautiful. And then this was the towel art that was that greeted us when we came back on our different beds. There's a bunch of bags over here. Lots of the art was very different here. What the tribes, the weaving that they did, the patterns. Many, many beautiful rugs and scarves. This is the oracle, the oldest oracle on the planet. Alexander the Great came here to ask if he would be leader of the world. The mountain, the Amun temple remains part of it. Not much of it's been excavated. This is the oracle site. It's on the other side of the wall here. We had time, private time. Well, we didn't even need private time. It was nobody was there until we were done. And as soon as we were done, a whole bunch of people came. Those were the kind of blessings that came. And each of us had a very different experience and got our questions answered in the way that was meaningful to us. There were some Bedouin women there that were doing henna art that now they have like a marker pen that they do it. It's pretty cool. This was just demonstrating. We did a lot of sitting on the ground. It was hard on my back. We went different places to watch the sunsets. This was one of them. Just have a beverage. Then we went to a salt cave to get buried in sea salt. This was our salt cave. Here's us getting buried. And we stayed about 40 minutes, I think it was 45 minutes. It was cold, had to work at generating heat. What was really interesting about Siwa is that there were a lot of mirrors. it was not an easy place for me to be. I got challenged with a lot of my little girl shit that hadn't hadn't surfaced before, and I'm really glad it did, but it wasn't a whole lot of fun because I was dealing with really little girl patterns of being left out and being shamed, and it nobody was doing that. It was how I was experiencing things. And but the cool thing, there were just the three of us and Hakeem on this part of the journey. Corina had asked if it would be all right if she didn't come because she didn't want to put Ruby through or us through the 10-hour car ride. They didn't think it was going to go well because they don't even own a car. And she'd never really ridden in a car for more than, like an hour ride in this going from one place to another in the city. And she didn't think it would go too well for them. And it was we all agreed, we kind of took a vote and said, yeah, that would be fine. Um, and the group it was really, the great thing about this was that as we were working through our stuff, we had enough trust that we could speak what was going on, speak our feelings and what we were feeling and be supported, and kind of held it a safe container to be able to process it. It was quite the experience. A lot of pretender voices for me. Here we are. We'd always after you swam, we'd have to hydrate. Mango juice, so much mango juice. It was so good. Oh, one night we went on a 4-hour safari into the desert. Only now safaris are done in Jeeps. And we all gathered with a whole bunch of other Jeeps of people that were, tourists, several people to a car. And we all went out into the desert in a caravan. And our drivers were very good at giving us exciting rides. So this is our Jeep, part of our Jeep tour. Finally.
We're taking you much as far from your food power. No water.
Car-
Water.
Carla does water blessings. And I had the shortest legs, so I offered to sit in the middle. To give you an idea of some of the desert. We were heading out to a Bedouin community that was doing a barbecue in where we camped overnight. And so our driver, we were just the three of us, our driver had instructions to keep us away from everybody else because we wanted our own time. So here's some pictures of what the desert looks like. As soon as this loads, it's a 360. I go all the way around. One of the things, that people do is wear head scarves wrapped in different ways depending on the tribe. Each tribe or family had a different way of wrapping, and it was to protect your head and your face. There wasn't wind the day that we were out. It was cloudy though. We went for sunset. Here I am. But they tie it around your head for you. We stopped. This is an area where this used to be sea. And Hakeem and his uncle have found proof that it was sea, then desert, then sea, then desert again. over thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And this is an area where the sand has blown away and it's the seafloor. Give you an idea of the size of that shell. That was a sand dollar. And it's petrified. Then our driver had a couple of dresses and they dress you up in them and want to take your pictures, and they do all sorts of cool things for you for tips. We went sand surfing and he made us tea. We were tea at sunset. And then we had a visitor. He liked grapes, so our driver had brought grapes so that we could, knowing that the foxes, the desert foxes, liked grapes. This was when we arrived to the Bedouin community. And really, it was just a site where they did dinners for people and entertainment. And they sat us down on the cushions and they brought the whole table in, all set with the food on it, the water bottles. We always drank water out of bottles everywhere. The workers, when they got done cleaning everything up, we did some drumming around the fire. Yeah, that drumming wasn't too spectacular. Sunrise. We all bought ponchos because it was going to be pretty cold for like $5. They were fleece ponchos. And then Elaine surprised us and had us all pick out new scarves. So our scarves were all the same pattern. They were different colors. Breakfast at sunrise. Hakeem tying scarves the way his family, in his family's style. And then this was our last day. We went to another place where there was also pools, and we were going to do a water ceremony at sunset, but the water was really scummy, so we didn't. This was the sunset, the side where the sunset. So this was our farewell for our time in Egypt. The three of us left, radiating light. And the next morning, we stopped on our way in Cleopatra's Pool one more time, and we were there so early that the shops weren't open. There were no other tourists around. The lighting was absolutely stunning. Elaine had the thought to ask Hakeem, is there any way we could fly back to Cairo, because that drive out was excruciating. And he's like, I don't know. The only airport's on the military base, but let me check. And so he did find, our driver knew of two brothers that had tour groups, both had tour groups that had chartered a military plane because they have a friend who's a retired military pilot, and they were flying back the day we were, and there were 4 seats left. And so we had to pay a little bit more, but it was well worth it, to fly back. And so we have our suitcases all packed. Nope, we couldn't bring any towels from the motel because we weren't going back. So we used our scarves to dry ourselves. But we all elected to have one more dip in Cleopatra's Pool, and one more mango juice, and a Turkish coffee. And the light was so gorgeous that all of the beautiful rug patterns just popped in the light. There was our military plane. We actually had to go through guarded gates more than once to get onto the base, and then we had to wheel our suitcases up to some military soldiers that went through our suitcases and then rolled them over to the plane. And this is the inside of the plane. The captain invited each person got to come up into the cockpit and see out the front of the plane. And then he announced that he was going to circle around the pyramids going both directions so both sides could see. Another thing that was a wish of mine that I had tried to get on the right side of the airplane flying into Cairo on the commercial flight. And the plane doesn't even go close to the pyramids, which makes sense because it would all of that pollution would probably destroy them. But I was sitting in the window seat, and these are pictures from our trip, like 360 degrees all the way around. Now, what's so fascinating about this picture, this is Tefnut. Right? Look at the size of the head compared to the body. It does not show up on the ground pictures, but here you can definitely see how much smaller that is. That head has been carved at least twice, if not 3 times, from the original. The original, it is thought that it was a lion, like a Sekhmet kind of lion face. And then different pharaohs went, no, I want my face on that Tefnut. And then the great house, Hakim's family house, is just like right about there. And so there was another one of my secret wishes that came through right at the very, very end.
The board will go alone, you'll hit the.
So the lesson for my trip and for this next year is that, and Hakim kept telling me, you have to have fun, treat life like a vacation. And so this is how we've end the film show.
Nothing dangerous, but keep holding, all right?
Yeah, it's like sledding.
Yeah. Ready?
Yep. Which Hakim has never even seen snow, so he doesn't know about sledding. Wee-haw! Treat
Will go alone, you'll hit
life
the.
like a
Nothing
vacation.
dangerous, but keep holding, all right?
Yeah, it's like sledding.
Yeah. Ready?
Yep. And that was Egypt. So thank you. We went over a little over 2 hours. That Tina, do you have any questions, comments?
Oh, it was very cool. Thank you for sharing everything.
Yeah, you're welcome. At the Oracle, my big question was, are we going to make it as a world into this next leap? And she said, yes, most definitely, be joy.
Well, that sounds perfect. That sounds
Be
perfect.
joy. And it is our
Joy.
vibration that we hold
Mhm.
that is the frequency that the other frequency will rise to match it. It's Gemat.
Mhm.
And to be that, just to be it.
Yes.
To have joy, to let your little child wake up. There's a song called A Call to Joy, and it starts out, what fun are we going to have today? And it started with a little girl. The story was an author and his daughter came in, Daddy, what are we gonna do? What fun are we gonna do today? What play are we gonna do today? And it's a call to joy.
Mhm.
And so that has been, it's taken quite a bit of time to integrate, and there's still layers and layers and layers of integrating and connecting into that deep womb wisdom and standing in my truth and being sovereign and feeling safe in sharing when the opportunity or the call to share is there. but to do it in joy and to use yakini. Yakini, my positivity is my protection. And if I don't pay attention to it, the negative doesn't exist. And I actually watched him do it, grandfather do it in a talk once when somebody brought up a question that was like, somebody said this about you, and he stopped. And he stopped and he went, my positivity is my protection. And he did not engage with that negative comment at all. It was a great teaching. So that was Egypt. I highly recommend, if you had the opportunity to travel with Hakeem and Corina, it is a deeply spiritual trip, and they are a couple that holds the container for your soul evolution. That is what the work that they do individually, and that they're doing it even more powerfully together.
Wonderful. Thank you for
Good.
sharing.
And their trip, they posted the dates for their trip for next year.
Oh,
For the it's the end of the last couple weeks of October for next year. So keep
okay.
that in mind.
I will.
All righty.
All right. Well, thank you. Good
Say
night.
bye to you. Thanks for attending, Tina, and thanks for everybody that's watching the recording. I'd love to hear your feedback. Give me a call or send me an email, text, whatever works.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you. Good night.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.